Usually, when we talk about a medical diagnosis,
Yeah.
there's this expectation of clinical precision.
Right, yeah. Like a broken bone.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, well, there it is. And that's comforting. We like injuries to be visible, localized, and, easily categorized.
Oh, absolutely. It's clean.
But step into the world of trauma and human resilience, and, that x-ray machine becomes entirely useless. We're looking at this diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky, where the injury isn't just a memory filed away in the mind, but something encoded in the very tissues of your body.
And that is really the core challenge here. The suffering isn't just psychological. It alters the physical hardware of the human organism.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're getting into today for this deep dive. We are looking at Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's groundbreaking work, specifically excerpts from his book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Right. His research completely dismantled the traditional view of human suffering. He proved that overwhelming experiences literally rewire our biology.
So we are going to unpack the mechanics of that rewiring for you. We'll look at how the brain and body are hijacked, and more importantly, how people can reverse that damage using some honestly highly counterintuitive methods.
Yeah, some of it goes against everything we thought we knew about therapy.
Totally.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to strip away the clinical jargon, to uncover the actual biology of resilience. We want you listening to this to have a tangible roadmap for self-leadership, so you can walk away with that profound feeling of, this is who I am becoming.
I love that. And, to get to that roadmap, we first have to understand the hardware failure. Because trauma renders traditional talk therapy practically useless for a lot of survivors.
Wait, really? Just talking about it doesn't work?
For a lot of people, no. And to understand why, we have to look at the brain's internal alarm system. So deep in the emotional center of the brain is the amygdala. Think of it as the brain's smoke detector.
Okay, the smoke detector.
Right. Its sole purpose is to identify danger and immediately flood the body with stress hormones. It triggers that fight or flight response. But sitting right behind your forehead is the medial prefrontal cortex.
And what does that do?
That acts as the watchtower. Its job is to look down at the situation logically, analyze the context, and tell the amygdala if the threat is real or just a false alarm.
Okay, so the smoke detector senses heat, and the watchtower looks out the window and says, relax, we just burned the toast. Stand down.
Exactly. Perfect analogy. And in a healthy brain, that system works seamlessly. Sensory information comes in, the smoke detector fires, and a fraction of a second later, the watchtower assesses reality.
Right. You get a little jump scare, but then you're fine.
Yeah. But in someone who has experienced severe trauma, that entire system breaks down. The smoke detector becomes hypersensitized. It goes into absolute overdrive at the slightest trigger.
So it's just ringing constantly.
Yes. And simultaneously, the watchtower goes entirely offline. The brain literally loses the physical capacity to distinguish between a past memory and a present danger.
But wait, humans have used willpower and logic to reason their way out of fear for centuries. Are you saying the biological hardware completely overrides a person's rational willpower in these moments?
It entirely overrides it. Yeah. The connection from the emotional brain to the rational brain is incredibly weak during a threat response.
Wow.
When the amygdala sounds the alarm, it actively shuts down the prefrontal cortex to ensure you react instantly. It doesn't want you standing around philosophizing about the danger,
That makes biological sense, I guess. You don't want to overthink a tiger jumping at you.
Exactly. And we see this vividly in brain scan research. There's a case in the book involving a couple, Stan and Ute, who survived this horrific multi-car pileup. Later, they were placed in an fMRI scanner and asked to listen to an audio script recreating their accident.
Oh, that sounds intense.
It was. When Stan heard the script, the scanner showed his amygdala lighting up like a wildfire. His blood pressure spiked, his heart raced, he started sweating.
So his brain wasn't just remembering the crash.
No, not at all. It was reacting as if the metal were crushing around him right then, right inside the medical facility.
His watchtower was completely unable to tell him, hey, you are safe in a hospital right now.
Exactly. But then you have Ute. Her brain scan revealed a completely different kind of biological failure. She was in the exact same wrecked car as Stan, but listening to the script, her brain didn't light up with hyperarousal.
What did it do?
It almost entirely shut down. The emotional centers went dark, her heart rate dropped, and her mind went blank. She experienced profound depersonalization.
Oh, wow. So she just checked out entirely.
Right. Her biological defense mechanism wasn't to fight or flee, it was to completely disconnect from her own body just to survive the sheer terror of the moment.
That is wild.
Mm.
Two diametrically opposed reactions to the exact same event. You have a massive system overload and a total system crash.
Yeah, it really shows how unpredictable the physical response is.
And the sources mentioned this hardware failure bleeds into how a person perceives the world long after the event, right? Like even robbing them of basic imagination.
Yeah, Dr. Kolk illustrates this with the story of Bill. He was a Vietnam War medic, and years after returning home, Bill was given a standard Rorschach ink blot test.
Right, the one where you look at the shapes and say what you see.
Exactly. Usually, people look at these abstract shapes and their prefrontal cortex plays with the imagery. They see, I don't know, dancing monks or butterflies or clouds.
Yeah, it's a creative exercise.
But Bill looked at the ink blots and saw the mangled bodies of the soldiers and children he couldn't save.
Oh, man. That is so dark.
Trauma had completely eradicated his capacity for imagination. He couldn't let his mind play because his horrific past was just constantly superimposed over his present reality.
This really highlights the sheer impotence of the rational brain in these states. I mean, if the watchtower is offline, trying to use logic to talk someone out of a trauma response is, well, it's like shouting swimming instructions at a drowning person from the dock.
That is a perfect way to put it. You can't appeal to their reason. You have to pull them out of the water first.
And because that internal alarm is constantly ringing or completely blown out, I imagine the person's own body becomes a terrifying, unpredictable place to live.
It does. And to survive that chronic interior terror, the mind performs a really drastic protective maneuver. It just cuts the sensory cord to the body.
Just severs the connection entirely.
Yeah. Psychiatrists refer to this state as alexithymia, which roughly translates from Greek as having no words for feelings.
Having no words for feelings. I mean, that sounds like you were just floating in a void.
It's a deeply isolating biological reality. People suffering from this will experience chronic, intense physical discomfort, a gnawing in the gut, a crushing weight on the chest, muscular rigidity.
But they don't know why.
Right. They cannot cognitively identify what the feeling is or why it's happening. A person might have clenched fists and a super tight jaw, but genuinely deny that they are angry.
Wait, they don't know they're angry, even with their fists clenched.
Exactly. Their brain simply registers the emotion as a dangerous, unidentified physical sensation that just has to be suppressed.
Okay, but if you are completely disconnected from your physical sensations, how does that actually impact your daily choices? Like, we always hear about trusting your gut, but what happens when you literally can't feel your gut?
You lose your internal compass entirely. I mean, our physical sensations are the actual data our brain uses to weigh options, form values, and make decisions.
Like a visceral reaction to things?
Yes. If you cannot feel your body, you cannot know what you desire, what you hate, or who you want to be. And when the internal void becomes unbearable, people naturally try to manipulate their physical state from the outside.
So they turn to external stuff.
Right. This is where we see coping mechanisms like compulsive doom scrolling on a phone just to numb the mind, or turning to alcohol, or developing eating disorders to quiet the internal noise.
We're, I guess, going the other way entirely.
Yeah. Conversely, some engage in extreme sensation seeking. Reckless driving, dangerous encounters, or self-harm just to feel a brief, sharp sense of control, or to literally prove to themselves they're still alive.
And the science backing this up is staggering. Like, there's that study by Dr. Ruth Lanius looking at the idling brain.
Yes, that study is fascinating.
When you or I lie in a scanner and are told to just think about nothing, our minds naturally wander. Our brain activates the default state network, which lights up the midline of the brain. She calls it the mohawk of self-awareness.
Right, because of the shape it makes on the stand.
Exactly. These are the areas responsible for sensing our own physical existence. But when trauma survivors were asked to think about nothing, their scans showed massive dark voids in that exact network.
Yeah, they had biologically lost the visceral connection to their own existence.
Which is precisely why recovery cannot begin in the rational mind. You have to work from the bottom up.
Exactly. Before you can process a memory, you have to teach the physical body that it is safe to experience sensation again.
Like pulling the drowning person onto the dock before you teach them the backstroke. So how do we actually do that? How do we rebuild that sensory compass?
Well, the foundational step is developing interoception. This is the practice of noticing your internal physical sensations without judgment or panic.
What does that look like in practice?
It starts incredibly small. noticing the temperature of the air on your skin, the weight of your legs in a chair, or just the rhythm of your breath.
So kind of changing the internal narrative from, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack and I'm going to die, to I notice my chest feels tight right now.
Yes, exactly. Developing that observational distance is crucial. Body-based practices like yoga are incredibly effective here because they teach the nervous system a fundamental truth.
Which is what?
That all sensations have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They don't last forever. Dr. van der Kolk details the journey of Annie, a survivor of severe abuse.
Oh, right. Her story was so moving.
Yeah. Her nervous system was so fragile that during her first yoga class, just a gentle, well-intentioned physical adjustment from the instructor triggered a massive panic reaction. Her body interpreted the touch as an absolute threat.
I mean, it takes immense courage to go back to a mat after your body betrays you like that.
It really does. But she kept returning. And the repetitive, predictable nature of the movements began to rewire her responses. By holding poses and focusing purely on her breath, she slowly learned to locate the exact muscle groups where she was storing her physical tension.
Like she was physically holding her traumatic memory.
Exactly. And eventually she realized she could feel those intense sensations clearly without being destroyed by them. The text describes this breakthrough moment where she began to cry. Not a frantic, terrified wail, but a gentle kind of cry.
She was finally befriending her own physical form.
Yes. She proved to her amygdala that feeling something intensely doesn't automatically equal danger.
And this extends beyond solitary practices too, right? Because our sources emphasize the biological necessity of attunement, like getting on the same wavelength with other people to regulate the nervous system.
Oh, totally. Because trauma is inherently isolating. It throws your biological rhythms completely out of sync with the surrounding world.
So how do you get back in sync?
Simple, communal rhythms can fundamentally reset a hyperactive nervous system. There's this brilliant play therapist named Steve Gross who works with deeply traumatized, highly aggressive children.
Does he do talk therapy with them?
No, he doesn't sit them down and ask them to articulate their feelings at all. He sits in the waiting room and simply rolls a beach ball toward a frozen, angry kid, and he just waits.
And eventually, the kid rolls it back.
Exactly. Just the rhythmic, predictable back and forth of the ball begins to downregulate the child's defense mechanisms. It physically proves the environment is safe enough for play to emerge.
The simplicity of that is stunning. But what happens when the trauma isn't just a general sense of danger, but a specific thwarted action?
Like, what do you mean?
Like someone who was attacked and pinned down, whose body desperately wanted to fight or run, but was physically prevented from doing so.
Right. Well, the body stores that incomplete biological imperative. The adrenaline and the urge to fight back remain locked in the nervous system.
So how do you unlock it?
Programs like model mugging address this directly. Survivors are placed in a highly controlled, physically safe environment where they are attacked by an instructor in a heavily padded suit.
Wow, that sounds terrifying, but also empowering.
It is incredibly empowering. It allows the survivor to physically unleash the fight or flight response they were denied during their actual trauma. They get to strike back, scream, and actually fight off the attacker.
So they get to finish the action.
Exactly. It provides the nervous system with the profound physiological pleasure of a completed action. It restores their biological sense of agency.
Okay, so by using breath, movement, rhythm, and completed actions, the body finally convinces the emotional brain that the tiger has left the room.
Yes, the biological hardware is stabilized.
But stabilizing the hardware doesn't erase the corrupted files. So, once the body is safe, how do we actually go about rewiring the fragmented mind and the memories themselves?
Right. So once the watchtower is capable of staying online, therapies like EMDR, that's eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing become highly effective.
And the mechanism here is fascinating. Let's look at David, the young man who was brutally stabbed and left blinded in one eye.
Yeah, David was consumed by rage, flashbacks, and just a desperate need for revenge. During an EMDR session, the therapist asks the patient to hold the traumatic memory in their mind while simultaneously tracking the therapist's moving fingers side to side with their eyes.
Tracking fingers seems so disconnected from deep psychological processing. Like, how does eye movement actually help the brain handle a stabbing memory?
It's all about working memory. By forcing the brain to focus on a present moment physical task, like moving the eyes side to side, it prevents the amygdala from fully hijacking the brain's processing power.
Ah, so it takes up some of the brain's bandwidth.
Exactly. The eye movements act as an anchor. keeping the prefrontal cortex online. For David, this dual attention state allowed his brain to safely unspool the memory of the attack without throwing his body into a full-blown panic response.
He could observe the memory without reliving it.
Right. It allowed his brain to finally integrate the event. It took a present-tense, fragmented nightmare and processed it into a cohesive narrative.
As David put it, the memory went from an act of horror to something that simply sucked, but belonged firmly in the past.
Yeah, it filed the memory in the correct cabinet instead of leaving it scattered all over the desk.
But a severe trauma doesn't just shatter memories. It fragments a person's entire personality. People feel like they're at war with themselves.
And this brings us to a revolutionary framework called Internal Family Systems, or IFS. IFS proposes that the mind is not a single unified entity, but a complex family of different subpersonalities or parts.
It's like different versions of ourselves running around in there.
Pretty much. When a trauma occurs, these parts are forced into extreme, exhausting roles just to keep the organism alive. At the bottom, you have the exiles.
Yeah, who are the exiles?
These are the highly vulnerable, often childlike parts of us that hold the raw pain, terror, and shame of the trauma. Because those emotions are too devastating to feel every day, the mind locks them away in the basement.
But locking away a part of your own mind requires a massive amount of energy.
Oh, it requires an entire management system. To keep the exiles locked away, other parts have to step up. IFS calls these the managers.
Okay, the managers, yeah.
These are the strict, hypercritical parts of our personality. They keep us emotionally numb, hypervigilant, or just relentlessly productive, so we never have a quiet moment to feel the underlying pain.
But managers aren't perfect, right? Things slip through.
Right. When a trigger slips past them and an exile's pain threatens to flood the system, the firefighters rush in.
And firefighters aren't interested in being careful. They just want to extinguish the flames at any cost.
Exactly, their function. Firefighters are the impulsive, destructive parts. They trigger sudden, terrifying rages, severe binge eating, or intense substance abuse.
Just aggressive numbing.
Yeah, their only goal is to violently numb the system and put out the emotional fire before it destroys the mind.
This framework is so deeply applicable to everyone, not just those with severe clinical trauma. I mean, every single person listening to this has a manager part.
Oh, undoubtedly.
It's that voice that takes over during a high-stakes meeting, making you rigidly professional, perfectly articulate, but completely cut off from your actual emotions.
Or that firefighter part that takes the wheel after a devastating day and makes you doom scroll for 4 hours. Or eat an entire sleeve of cookies.
Right. The behavior seems toxic. But if these all started as survival strategies, does that mean our most self-destructive habits are actually misguided attempts to protect ourselves?
That is the most profound realization of the IFS model. Your worst behaviors are desperate protective strategies. The goal of this therapy is not to hate these parts, fight them, or destroy them.
What is the goal then?
The goal is to separate from them. IFS posits that beneath all the managers and firefighters, every single person possesses an undamaged core self.
The self with a capital S.
Yes. This self is inherently compassionate, curious, and calm. Think of it as the conductor of the orchestra. When you strengthen that core self, you can internally look at your rigid manager or your impulsive firefighter and say, I see you. I know you're working incredibly hard to protect me from feeling that old pain, but I am an adult now. I am safe. You can step back.
You stop fighting your own mind and start leading it. That is the essence of self-leadership.
It's life-changing.
But as incredibly empowering as that internal work is, a human being doesn't live in a vacuum. A perfectly regulated nervous system, isolated in a cabin in the woods, isn't a full life.
No, individual healing is really only half the equation. True recovery requires us to step out of isolation and safely re-engage with humanity.
Because trauma cuts you off from that.
Severely. It leaves people feeling God-forsaken, completely cut off from the human race. To heal that final layer, we need what the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission called Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. What does that mean exactly?
It's the philosophical concept that my humanity is inextricably bound up in yours. We are biologically wired to belong, and we simply cannot fully heal alone.
I see theater programs listed in our sources as a method for this, which, that seems wildly counterintuitive.
How so?
If someone is terrified of other people, afraid of conflict, and deeply afraid of being perceived, why on earth would you put them on a stage under a spotlight?
Because theater provides a structured, invincible container for those exact fears. Look at the programs run for foster care teenagers who have endured unimaginable neglect and abuse.
Okay.
These kids are fundamentally terrified of conflict and vulnerability. Theater forces them to safely embody conflict. They have to project their voices, take up physical space, and maintain eye contact.
But you're pretending to be someone else.
Exactly. By stepping into a character, they are given a psychological shield. They share scripts dealing with profound themes of betrayal, punishment, abandonment, and loss.
Oh, I see. It's beautifully ironic. Theater is about pretending to be someone else, but for these survivors, putting on a character is actually the only way they can safely express their truest, most terrifying internal realities.
Precisely. If anyone judges them, it's the character being judged, not them. It allows them to finally tell their truth and be witnessed by a community without the threat of rejection.
That is so powerful.
And it goes back to the biological necessity of physical attunement. These theater programs incorporate deep mirroring exercises.
Like copying each other's movements.
Yeah. You take two teenagers who have spent their entire lives keeping the world at arm's length. You place them face to face. One slowly raises an arm, the other perfectly mirrors the movement. One shifts their weight, the other follows.
So they don't even have to talk.
Without speaking a single word, they are learning to physically synchronize with another human being.
They are breaking through the profound loneliness of their trauma by experiencing physical and emotional synchrony. They are proving to their nervous systems that it is entirely possible to be safe in the presence of another person.
Yes. It transcends merely surviving the day. It becomes about truly belonging to the world. When a person can safely inhabit the physical sensations of their own body, lead the fragmented parts of their own mind, and rhythmically connect with the people around them, they are no longer just managing a list of clinical symptoms.
They have reclaimed their entire humanity. Let's take a moment to look at the massive terrain we've covered today. We started with a broken biological alarm system, an amygdala on overdrive and a watchtower completely offline.
Right, the hardware failure.
We look at how the mind cuts the cord to the body to survive, leaving us numb and drifting. We learned that we can't talk our way out of that state. We have to do a bottom-up reboot. By utilizing breath, yoga, and communal rhythms, we establish islands of safety in our physical tissues.
Which then creates the stability needed for the mind to do its work. We can use tools like EMDR to anchor the brain in the present while finally filing away the nightmares of the past.
And through internal family systems, we step into the role of the conductor, organizing our protective managers and firefighters, allowing our undamaged core self to actually lead. Finally, through attunement and community, we build the bridge back to the human race.
It's a complete shift in how we approach healing.
It really is. I want to speak directly to you now as you listen to this. Whether you are navigating the heavy echoes of profound trauma or simply wrestling with the grinding daily stress that disconnects you from your own life, this science changes the entire paradigm. Knowing that your body keeps the score is not a life sentence. Right. It is the exact opposite. It is a highly tangible, actionable roadmap. By simply learning to notice your physical sensations without judgment, by befriending your own nervous system, you take the wheel. You move from a passive state of enduring your biology to an active state of self-leadership where you can firmly say, this is who I am becoming.
To build on that roadmap, I want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own. Throughout everything we've discussed today, a striking pattern emerges.
What's that?
The behaviors we tend to judge the most harshly in ourselves, our sudden outbursts of rage, our tendency to emotionally shut down, our most destructive coping mechanisms, almost always originated as brilliant, desperate strategies to save our own lives.
Wow.
So what if the parts of yourself that you like the least are actually the ones that worked the hardest to protect you when you had no other defenses? And what might happen if the next time those parts flare up, instead of fighting them, you simply thanked them for their service?
Even when the diagnostic picture is murky, the architecture for healing is already built inside of you. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.